You've been lied to about rent. You've heard it your whole life. Renting is throwing money away. You're just paying your landlord's mortgage. It sounds obvious, but feels true. And it has pushed millions of people into buying homes they couldn't actually afford at the worst possible time. But here's what nobody tells you. Buying a home has its own pile of money that vanishes the moment you sign. Today, we're going to follow the money on both sides, honestly, and you'll see exactly when renting is the smarter financial move and when it isn't. The phrase isn't new. For most of the last century, owning a home was the single clearest path to building wealth in America. Prices generally rose, mortgages forced you to save, and rent really did feel like pouring water into sand. So the logic stuck. Rent equals zero. A mortgage equals equity. But that logic quietly assumes three things that aren't always true. That you'll stay put for years, that home prices only go up, and that buying is basically free. Let's test all three. Here's the part the bumper sticker version leaves out. When you buy, a chunk of money disappears that you never get back. Start with the transaction itself. Selling a home in the US typically costs the seller somewhere around 8 to 10% of the sale price once you add it all up. Roughly 5 to 6% in agent commissions, plus another 1 to 3% in other closing costs like title insurance, escrow, and transfer taxes. And that's just the exit. When you buy, you also pay closing costs on the way in. So the full round trip, buy, then sell, can easily eat close to 1/10 of the home's value before you've made a single dollar. Then there's the money that leaves every single month and never becomes equity. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, roofs, boilers, that surprise plumbing bill. And in the early years of a mortgage, the large majority of your payment is interest, not principal. That interest is, in the most literal sense, money you're paying to the bank for the privilege of borrowing. It's throwing money away, by the exact definition people use to attack rent. None of this means buying is bad. It means buying has its own leaks, and an honest comparison has to count them. So, what does a renter get for that monthly check? Two things that are easy to undervalue: flexibility and freed up cash. Flexibility has real financial value. If a better job opens up in another city, a renter can take it. A homeowner has to sell and pay that round-trip cost or become a long-distance landlord. The shorter your time horizon, the more that transaction cost dominates everything else. This is why a common rule of thumb says you often need to stay in a home several years just to break even on the costs of buying versus renting. The second thing is the gap. In many markets, renting costs less per month than owning the equivalent home once you include taxes, insurance, and maintenance. A renter who actually invests that monthly difference instead of spending it isn't throwing money away at all. They're building wealth in a different bucket. That last part is the catch, and we'll be honest about it. This only works if you invest the difference. A renter who rents cheaply and spends every spare pound does lose the forced savings benefit a mortgage provides. The mortgage's hidden superpower isn't magic returns, it's discipline. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Renting versus buying isn't a character test. It's not responsible adults buy, losers rent. It's a math question with a few honest inputs. Buying tends to win when you'll stay put for many years, when your local price to rent ratio is reasonable, and when the monthly cost of owning is close to renting. Over a long enough horizon, the transaction costs get spread thin, and forced equity plus any appreciation can pull ahead. Renting tends to win when your timeline is short or uncertain, when buying in your area is wildly more expensive per month than renting, or when locking up a huge down payment would wreck your emergency fund or your investing. In those cases, the throwing money away line has it exactly backwards. The point isn't that one always beats the other. It's that renting is throwing money away is a slogan, not an analysis. And slogans have talked a lot of people into the most expensive purchase of their lives without ever doing the math. So, 3 things to take with you. 1. Buying has its own money that disappears: commissions, closing costs, interest, maintenance. So the comparison was never rent versus zero. 2. Renting buys flexibility and frees up cash, and a renter who invests the difference is building wealth, just in a different bucket. 3. It's a math question driven by your time horizon and your local price to rent ratio, not a slogan about who's responsible.